There is a little story, but first of all, there's several personal anecdotes which allow a question to be posed to us, and that question has been posed before, and the anecdotes have been told before, but putting them together, let's see what comes out of them for us. The first is that anecdote where, sometimes there are those who have asked me, how do you feel when people walk up your driveway? And the response is, for many years it was like having an open door where anyone could come at any time, because there was the belief, you might call it, that God or the divine had sent them. But then it changed, and I changed, and it was no longer an open door. But when there were those who came up the driveway, I would see the baggage that they were carrying and sometimes gulp at the very effect of that baggage. But then I would say, well, God or the divine has sent them. But then it changed again, or you could say that I changed once again, and it came to that place where I would see God coming up the driveway, and then I would see the baggage. But there was no longer the gulping or the physical feelings that were associated with that baggage. But now it can be said that when anyone walks up the driveway, I neither see God nor do I see or feel the baggage. And the question's been asked of us before, what is this place or this state? And the other little anecdote is, in those years with Divine Mother and witnessing and being with her day after day after day, it was seen that she had what you would term an elephantine memory. Or could it be that? Because someone would come to her and say, I have this friend, Divine Mother, would you see them? And there would be an instant response from her, no, I don't want to see them. Yes, tell them to give me a call. Or sometimes she would say, no, now is not the time. And I used to ponder to myself, how does she know? What does she see? Because it was obviously not of an occult nature, the seeing and the sensing that one would have by tuning in to someone. So I would say to myself, how does she see? How does she know? But then, in this place where I now find myself, where I no longer see God or the baggage or feel the baggage, it's like that. It's like there's a seeing beyond the seeing. Now maybe you can throw some light on this, but there is that little story about the man called Li Po. Now Li Po was in charge of all the king's horses, the stables, and he had the amazing ability of being able to choose the horses for the stable, and the king had a stable of horses that surpassed any in any other kingdom. But Li Po was growing very old, so the king came to him one day and he said, Li Po, you have been choosing and taking care of my horses for these many decades, but you're now getting old now, and I'm afraid that there will be no one to take your place. Will you train someone to take over your estate in the stables?" Lalipo said, "Well, sire, I have the ability to be able to judge a horse by looking at it and feeling it. I can see its attributes, its qualities, and its possibilities. But even my sons do not have this ability. They can tell a nag from a good horse, but they do not have the abilities that I seem to have. And it is believed that these qualities cannot be passed on to anyone, although certainly I can teach someone to train their eye to know whether the muscles on the horse's legs are strong enough and their stamina, etc., etc." But the king was very disappointed. But then Lipo said, "Well, I do know one man. He's just a porter in the bazaar, but he seems to have uncanny knowledge about the ways of horses." So the king said, "Hire him straight away." So the porter from the bazaar was hired and given the task of finding a superlative horse for the king. And after some searching, a horse was chosen. And when the porter came back to the king, and the king asked him, "Well, what sort of a horse is it?" The porter said, "Well, it's a yellow mare." But when the horse was delivered to the king, it turned out to be a black stallion. So the king called Lipo to him and said, "This fellow that you hired for me is absolutely no good at all. He tells me I've got a yellow mare and it turns out to be a black stallion." "Oh," said Lipo, "he far surpasses my expectations of him, because he no longer gauges or sees the qualities and the subtleties and nuances of a horse, but he sees their essence." And as it turned out, the horse was the best horse that had ever been added to the king's stables. And Lipo added a sentence to that which he spoke to the king. "He far surpasses my expectations of him, because he sees." In listening to these anecdotes and this story, we can ask ourselves, and explicitly, what is it that's there for us when we no longer, perhaps, have the need to bring our mind to a center, to discipline our mind, to even be aware of our body? What is this seeing? Just like these stories that have been told of late. I can see with my nose. and hear with my eyes as these Zen stories go. What is it that is seeing? Or is it that when we no longer have a need to bring that seeing to a place that we perhaps call the present, the now, that seeing is there, naturally, unbidden, uncalled for? In my parlance, I call it coming with the territory. When we arrive at that place where there's no longer any need for us to bring our mind to a place, to concentrate on being present or attentive or aware, that seeing is present. What say you? Where is this place? What is this state? And what relationship does knowing have to this seeing? That's what we'll explore over these coming days. Thank you.